أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين أما بعد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, inshallah, we're going to be completing Kitab al-Zakat. And the two subjects we're going to be reading today are Eid al-Fitr charity, which is Sadaqat al-Fitr, and also the ritual sacrifice. So we're finishing off with the two Eids, inshallah, and then Kitab al-Zakah is going to be finished. We will have a quick look at Kitab al-Hajj next lesson. And then we will see about ending our Hanafi fiqh course and moving on to something like Risalatul Qushayriya, Imam Qushayri's epistle, which is about tasawwuf. So we're starting, inshallah. Sadaqatul Fitr is mandatory, which means wajib, not fard, but it's still something you have to do, and payable during one's lifetime, which means that once Sadaqatul Fitr becomes wajib upon you, you have to pay it, and even if you don't pay it during Eid, you still have to pay it after Eid. So if we read the footnote here, it says, although it is recommended to pay Sadaqatul Fitr before leaving for the Eid prayer area, the Musalla, which is usually the mosque, it is permissible to pay it at any time during one's lifetime. So if you didn't pay it last Eid, you can still pay it now. In contrast, some scholars opined that it must be paid from the time of true dawn to sunset on the day of Eid al-Fitr. Otherwise, the obligation falls away. The former is the soundest, the Sahih opinion. So you have your whole lifetime to pay it. The obligation does not fall away. Upon every free Muslim, even if it is a child. So Sadaqatul Fitr is wajib upon children too. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that the children are going to be punished for not paying it. That means the guardian has to pay it from the child's wealth. Now, we already talked about before how a child can be wealthy. The child could have inherited money from their parents. So the child, that's that child's money. That is his haqq. And no guardian is able to touch that child's money. There are especially ayahs about treating the orphans well and not taking their wealth, for example. Or an insane individual who possesses the Sadaqatul Fitr threshold. So even the insane individual has to pay it. What does that mean? Again, whoever the guardian is has to pay it from their money. The Sadaqatul Fitr threshold considers assets that do not have the propensity to increase due to their inherent nature. So remember when we were talking about zakat, we said when we're calculating the threshold for zakat, that we only take the wealth which has the propensity to increase, which means dinar, dirham, which is silver, gold, and anything else considered money, including trading chattel. So these things have the propensity to increase, which means you use them for trade and you become wealthier and wealthier if everything goes right. What we did not include was a second car, was a second house, was extra clothes, extra books that you may have. We said these, although they will take you out of becoming poor, you will no longer be considered poor because you have a second house or a third car or a fourth car. It doesn't matter how many cars you have, you still do not pay zakat because we only look at wealth which has the propensity to increase, unless it's trading chattel. So unless you've bought these cars with the intention of selling them, you do not pay zakat on them. But when it comes for Eid al-Fitr, we do take these into account. So we do take So when it comes to the sadaqatul fitr, we do take into account a second car, a third car, a second house, the books and the clothes that you have, which are more than your necessary need, which is only a couple items of clothing. So you do have to put those into account. So due to the inherent nature, and are in excess of basic needs such as that and the necessary needs of the family. So once you take these needs out, many people have to pay sadaqatul fitr. Many people that we may consider poor in our age actually do have to pay sadaqatul fitr, simply because they'll have 2 pairs of shoes, 3 pairs of shoes, 4 pairs of shoes, like 5 pairs of t-shirts. Just the clothing itself may even reach sadaqatul fitr threshold. We're looking at, do you have maybe a second washing machine lying around for no reason? The first washing machine will count as a basic need. The second we won't. Do you have any other wealth lying about? All of these things will take into account. So a lot of people will actually pay sadaqatul fitr. Now, the obligation to pay sadaqatul fitr, like the obligation to perform hajj, does not fall away due to the perishing of one's assets after payment became mandatory. So once it's wajib for you to pay, you have to pay it. Even if you become poor or bankrupt afterwards, you have to find the money to pay it. It doesn't fall away. In contrast, zakat is not mandatory after the destruction of assets, right? Sadaqatul fitr is paid on behalf of oneself, one's needy children, okay, and adult offspring if they are needy and insane, as in you are the guardian for them, okay? So you have to pay for yourself, your children, and your adult offspring if they are needy and insane, okay? So they're basically still children, right? They may look like adults, but they're basically still children in the fact that you still need to take care of them as their parents. So you have to pay sadaqatul fitr on these people. If you've noticed, it doesn't include your wife. Your wife has to pay sadaqatul fitr by herself. It doesn't include the husband. Again, the wife does not pay for the husband does not pay for the wife unless it's in agreement, okay? The grandfather is like the father in the latter's absence. If the father's not around, the grandfather is like the father, as in the grandfather has to pay sadaqatul fitr on his grandchildren, right? And again, adult offspring if they are needy and insane. Sadaqatul fitr is not paid on behalf of one's wife or sane adult offspring, okay? So if your children are adults and they're not insane, then you don't have to pay sadaqatul fitr for them. You don't pay sadaqatul fitr for them. If it is paid without their permission, it suffices if they are in his household. Why? Because usually that implies permission, as in many families nowadays just expect the dad to pay it. So we say that this counts as permission. But if there is no permission, normally you're not allowed to pay sadaqatul fitr for anybody else. It's their obligation, right? So again, remember, when Eid al-Fitr is about to come, talk to your wife, talk to your husband, talk to your children if they're adults, and tell them, listen, I'm going to pay on your behalf, or I'm not going to pay on your behalf. So pay your own sadaqatul fitr now. I would recommend definitely not paying on their behalf. Why? So that they get used to this Eid al-Fitr, sadaqatul fitr, so they understand what it is. A lot of children, their parents or their dad pays for them, and then they become 14, 15, 16, 17, they leave the house and they have no idea what sadaqatul fitr is. They've never paid it, right? So I recommend, obviously, give them the money to pay it before sadaqatul fitr, and then tell them they have to pay the sadaqatul fitr. And then they're going to ask, what is sadaqatul fitr? How do I pay it? And you're going to tell them, figure it out. Or you're going to say, listen, go to the masjid. The masjid's going to be collecting sadaqatul fitr. This is what sadaqatul fitr is for. Teach your children so that when they become adults, they're not surprised when the imam tells them, okay, you haven't been paying sadaqatul fitr for 10 years. You have to now pay it all, right? Now, the quantity of the Sadaqatul Fitr payment, how much has to be paid? Every year this changes because the price of food changes. So every year, usually you'll have these Islamic communities making a statement saying that this year Sadaqatul Fitr is £5, £10, £15. Now, a lot of communities say £5. Some communities say 15. Depending on the person's circumstances, will say 15 or 5. The reason being is because not only can you give wheat, but you also give dates. And the reason between the £5 and the £15 discrepancy is dates are usually very expensive in the UK. So if you go according to the price of dates, it's going to be about £15, even more. If you go according to the price of like wheat or flour, which is the same as wheat, then it's going to be very little. So what they do is they try to balance it. They go according to, an average between the two. They say about 15, £20 if it's just Sadaqatul Fitr. Now, if somebody comes and they say, I have to pay for, because I'm unable to fast, I'm diabetic, I have to pay every day for Ramadan, obviously we're not going to give them the higher number. We're going to give them the lower number. But Sadaqatul Fitr, because it's paid once a year, and the person paying it is, not a really poor person, then we say £15, close to that number. So the Sadaqatul Fitr payment is half a sa', right? Half a sa', I believe it was 1.7 kilograms or something. If we remember one sa', so see, it's telling us to go all the way back to C13.18. Give me one moment. Okay. So here, I've got this book. Is it Mu'jam Lughatul Fuqaha? This book, it takes all, it's basically a dictionary, but for fiqh, right? For jurisprudence. It takes the Arabic, it translates it into English and French. So if you look at it here, so you'll get the Arabic, then you'll get English and French. So if we're looking at sa', for some reason, I seem to not be able to find it. I know it's in here somewhere. I've seen it before. There it is. صاع بالفتح أصواع أصواع وصيعان وحدة من وحدات مكاييل. It's a measure of capacity. ومقدار الصاع عند الحنفية, and according to the Hanafis, a صاع is 4 amdads, which is 8 artans, which is 57 points. Sorry, it's 1028.57 dirhams, which is 3,362 liters, which is 3,261.5 grams. So 3.26 kilos, basically. 3,261.5 grams. So that's 3 kilos, 261 grams, 0.5. So half a sa' would be somewhere around 1,700, 1.7 kilos, around that, of wheat or flour or parched wheat, or again, so it's either half a sa' of wheat, and remember wheat is cheaper than dates, yeah? So it's half a sa' of wheat or 1 sa' of dates. Now, 1 sa' was, what would we say, around 3 kilos, 3,261 grams or something. So 3.2 kilos, right, of dates. Barley or raisins. Okay, so if you go according to dates, right, 3.2 kilos of dates. If I'm just going to open up just Asda, right, as a supermarket, and we type in dates here, just to get an idea of how much a dates cost. Obviously, most people, they don't buy their dates from a supermarket. They'll buy it from like normal, what we like to call Middle Eastern markets or Turkish markets or whatnot. So in Asda, dates are £8.35 per kilo. £8.35 per kilo. Some of them are £9.48 per kilo. The cheapest one I can see are the Medina Delight Khudri dates, which come to £5.56 per kilo. So no matter how you look at it, it's above £15 if we were to go according to 1 sa' of dates. So the way I'll try and I'll share the screen with you guys. One moment. There we go. So if we look at here, right? So if you look at the bottom there where I've highlighted, you can see that over here, that's the cheapest one I've seen. These medjool dates are 10. These are 8. I'm not looking at these ones. I don't know if they're chocolates and whatnot. They look like they could be chocolates. So as you can see, like the cheapest one is £5.56. So that will be about the same everywhere, more or less. You're looking about £15 if you go according to 1 sa' of dates. But if we go to flour, for example, right, half a sa' of flour, £1 per kilo, there you go. Or if you go here, this is bread flour, 81p per kilo. So literally according to this, right? If you went half a sa' of flour, you would only pay 1.7 pounds. So there you can obviously see that if we're going half a sa' of wheat, half a sa', which is 1.7 kilos, right? Around, and it's £1 per kilo, then you're literally paying 1.7 pounds. But if you go one sa' of dates, you're paying over 15 pounds. So if you look at it, it's literally 15x, 1,500% more expensive, right? So that's where you get the difference between some people, they say £5, some people, they say 15. And obviously, it's better for the poor person for it to be 15 because the poor people are receiving this money. So, inshallah, that was insightful. We'll go back to the book now. Now, barley or raisins, obviously, they're going to be different. Usually, the most expensive is dates. It always has been in the UK, right? You might go to somewhere like Mecca, Medina, somehow it'll be super cheap, but everyone pays according to where they are. The aforementioned may be of low quality. Now, if you are giving food, you may give low quality ones. So you don't have to go for, I don't know what the most expensive dates are. You don't have to go for the best premium quality dates. It can be of low quality as long as it's something that's edible, right? It hasn't spoiled, it hasn't dried up, it hasn't been ruined, yeah? But it's not the best out there, right? So if we go to 115, if foodstuffs are given as payment, they may be of low quality as long as it is not rotten or defected, okay? So if it's edible. However, if the value of the foodstuff is paid, if you're going to give the money, then it must be the value of good quality grade ones, okay? For types of foodstuffs not stipulated by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, such as sorghum and bread, what is reckoned is the value of the foodstuffs, okay? Now, what it says, to give the value of sadaqatul fitr in monetary currency, so to give it as pounds, right, is superior to giving foodstuff itself during times of prosperity. So if people have food, then giving them money is better. Why? Because they may need a bed, they may need a mattress, right? They may need a rug for their house, right? So if you give them dates, that's fine. But if you give them the money of the dates, then if they need dates, they'll go and buy it. If they need something else, they can spend it on that, right? They may need a uniform for their kids. When Sadaqatul Fitr becomes mandatory. So inshallah, everyone's understood this, right? Sadaqatul Fitr, half a sa' of wheat or flour or parched wheat. Okay, so when we say wheat, we also mean the flour of the wheat. It's the same thing. It's just it's the whole wheat, or you've ground it down to flour. Same thing. Or one sa' of dates. Remember, one sa' being 3.261 kilos. So that's the difference between the prices. So when Sadaqatul Fitr becomes mandatory, Sadaqatul Fitr becomes mandatory at true dawn on the day of Eid al-Fitr, at true dawn, not the night before. Okay, so normally what happens is in Islam, the night comes first, right? We all know this. So after Maghrib, it's basically the next night, the next day's night, right? So for on Thursday at 9:50 p.m., it's actually Friday night. Yeah. But Sadaqat al-Fitr becomes mandatory at true dawn, which is Fajr, right? On the day of Eid al-Fitr, so the end of Fajr, yeah? On the day of Eid al-Fitr. Hence, it is not mandatory on whoever dies before or is born or enters Islam after this time. The same applies if one becomes needy before or attains wealth after this time, right? So that's the ruling, yeah? True dawn on the day of Eid al-Fitr. It is recommended to make the payment before leaving for the Eid prayer area, the Musalla, after true dawn on the day of Eid al-Fitr. Sorry, true dawn is the start of Fajr, no? On the day of Eid al-Fitr. It is valid to make the payment before or after the day of Eid al-Fitr. So you can make the payment before. That's not the subject here. What we're talking about is when it becomes mandatory, right? So if you pass away on the night of Eid al-Fitr, because the night comes first, you don't have to pay it, right? As in, it doesn't have to be taken from the inheritance and paid on your behalf. But if someone passes away at Fajr time or after Fajr, then it has become mandatory upon them and it should be taken from the inheritance they leave. It is permissible for each individual to give the Sadaqatul Fitr payment to one or many needy individuals, just as a group may pay one needy person. Okay? So everyone can get their Sadaqatul Fitr together and give it to one needy person. One person may give it to many different people. It's fine. So basically, there's no limitations to the amount of people you can give it to. The eligible recipients of Sadaqatul Fitr are the same as Zakat, except for the Zakat worker who is not needy. Okay? They may not take Sadaqatul Fitr. Sadaqatul Fitr is not paid to him. Furthermore, contrary to the opinion of Abu Yusuf, so when we say contrary to the opinion of Abu Yusuf, what does that mean? That means Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Muhammad both say Sadaqatul Fitr is payable to a non-Muslim subject of the Islamic State, well, who we call a dhimmi. Okay, so someone with a visa or with basically indefinite leave to stay in an Islamic state, right? They are called the dhimmis, and it is payable to a dhimmi. Now the proofs are here. So that was Sadaqatul Fitr. It's paid once a year at Eid al-Fitr. It's paid when Fajr starts. You have your whole life to pay it, even though you should pay it before Eid prayer. You have your whole life to pray it. Now, the next subject is the ritual sacrifice, what we just had. The ritual sacrifice, the Adha, the Udhiyah, yes, is the name given to a specific animal slaughtered at a specific time with the intention of worship. Okay? The conditions of its mandatoriness, wajib, are that one is a Muslim, they're free, so not a slave, a non-traveler, so if you're traveling during Eid al-Adha, you don't have to sacrifice, sane, not insane, adult, and not needy. Okay, so not poor. So not needy as defined for the purposes of the mandatory of Sadaqatul Fitr. So the calculation we use for Sadaqatul Fitr and the sacrifice are the same. So a person, they may not be rich enough to pay zakat, but they may have to pay Sadaqatul Fitr and do the sacrifice. Being male is not a condition. Okay, sacrifice is not just for men. Women also have to sacrifice animals, and it is also mandatory upon females. Okay. What is reckoned is that those conditions are found at the end of the prescribed time. What does that mean? That means because you have until the third day of Eid, if you're not rich on the first day, you're not rich on the second day, but on the third day you become rich, you still have to do the sacrifice, even if they are absent at its commencement, right? So if you become wealthy before the third day of Eid or before the fourth day of Eid, then you must sacrifice. The legal reason for the mandatoriness, so remember the sabab is what happens that it becomes wajib upon you of the ritual sacrifice is the prescribed time. So it's Eid al-Adha. Once Eid al-Adha happens, it becomes wajib upon you, which is the day of sacrifice. The obligatory integral, so what do you have to do, is to slaughter that which is permissible to slaughter from livestock, not anything besides. Okay? The legal consequence, so we're going to read what livestock is you're able to sacrifice, yeah? The legal consequence of the ritual sacrifice in this world is discharge of the responsibility to perform a mandatory act, so you no longer have to do it. In the next world, it is attaining reward by the bounty of Allah Jalla Jalaluh with a sound intention, inshallah. Now, ritual sacrifice, that is to make the blood of livestock flow, right? The sacrifice isn't handing over meat to poor people. The sacrifice is the flowing of blood, okay? Is mandatory, you'll understand why we say that, is mandatory upon a Muslim who is free, a non-traveler and not needy. In contrast to Sadaqatul Fitr, ritual sacrifice is made on behalf of oneself, but not one's child. Okay, so you don't have to do a qurbani for every person in your family or your children. You only have to do a qurbani for yourself on Eid al-Adha. We're not talking about aqiqah. It is mandatory to sacrifice a sheep or a seventh of a camel. How do you sacrifice a seventh of a camel? That means 7 people get together and they sacrifice 1 camel, or cattle, or a big cow. Yeah, from true dawn on the day of sacrifice, so the 10th of the Dhul Hijjah, to the end of the 3rd day of sacrifice. Even though Eid is 4 days, right? You have until the 3rd day. It is preferable to sacrifice on the 1st day, then the 2nd, and then the 3rd day. If one misses the sacrifice in a particular year, it is mandatory. So let's say you didn't sacrifice, but you had to, but you didn't. It is mandatory to donate the market value of 1 sheep amongst the needy, and one cannot eat anything from the meat oneself if you've missed it. If you haven't missed it, you can eat the meat. But if you've missed it, think of it like a punishment. You're not allowed to eat the meat. Okay? It is valid for 6 other people to share in a camel that has been bought by a non-needy person for ritual sacrifice. It needs to be bought by a non-needy person with the intention of ritual sacrifice. When they intend to divide the meat, it is divided by weight, not by estimation. Why? Because remember, a form of riba is when you give something which is the same thing but with different weights. For example, if somebody gives you 500 grams of dates, let's not say you, if somebody gives a person 500 grams of dates and that person gives them in return 600 grams of dates, this is riba and it's haram and it's forbidden. Okay? The same ruling applies here. If you're dividing up the meat of the camel, right, it needs to be divided by weight, not estimation, because the meat is the same. I cannot give 400 grams of meat and receive 500 grams of meat. Okay, so it needs to be divided by weight, unless the trotters or hide are also with it. Why? Because now it's not just meat. You're giving meat and the hide and the trotters, right? As we are then considered to be exchanging meat for a different genus. We're not exchanging meat for meat, we're exchanging meat for something else. So therefore, you don't have to go by weight. If even one of the co-sharers in the sacrifice is a Christian or someone who intends the meat for his own consumption only, as in he doesn't intend it for sacrifice, it is not permissible. Okay. So all 7 people have to redo it. It is a condition for the city dweller that the earliest Eid prayer is before the ritual sacrifice. It is a condition. Even if the sacrifice is before the Eid khutbah. Okay. So the Eid khutbah is sunnah. So if you do it after the Eid prayer, but before the Eid khutbah, it's still fine. Okay. And even if he has not performed the Eid prayer, even if the person himself didn't pray the Eid prayer, he still has to do it after the Eid prayer. So he has to know that the mosque has finished their prayer. As for the village dweller, okay, he may perform it from true dawn. Why? Because there's no Eid in a village. What is reckoned is the place of the sacrificed animal, not the place of the one paying for the sacrifice. So we don't care about where you are, we care about where your animal is. Why is that important? Because you might get asked the question, especially when you're collecting sacrifice. Usually, where do we send our sacrifices? To Africa. So our animals get sacrificed in Africa. There's a time zone difference. Sometimes they'll sacrifice the animal, right, before you've prayed Eid, or a lot later, or something like that. We don't care about where you are. We care about where your animal is. So as long as where the animal is, it's after Eid prayer, okay, then that's fine. Even though you might not have prayed Eid yet, or Eid might have not happened yet, wherever your animal is, we look at that time zone. If the sacrificial animal is in a village and the one paying for the sacrifice is in a city, it is permissible to sacrifice before the Eid prayer. The opposite is not permissible. So if the person is in the village, but the animal is in the city, then the animal cannot be sacrificed before Eid prayer. If it transpires that the Imam, problematic Imam, if it transpires that the Imam was not in a state of ritual purity when he led the Eid prayer, the prayer, not the ritual sacrifice, is repeated. So people have to repeat the prayer, but the sacrifice does not have to be repeated. Alhamdulillah. If the congregation has not dispersed, okay, that means if the congregation has dispersed, then they don't have to pray Eid prayer again. I believe it's going to say. The Eid prayer is not repeated if the congregation has dispersed. You don't have to go out and call everybody back. If witnesses testify to the Imam, we're talking about witnesses, not just random nonsense. Witnesses testify to the Imam that it is the day of Eid and the prayer and sacrifice are performed, and then it transpires that it is the day of Arafah. So the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, not the 10th of Dhul Hijjah, the prayer and the sacrifice are not repeated. It suffices them. Why? Because witnesses have testified, which means you have no doubt that it's true. And because you had no doubt that it was true when you did it, it's accepted. We had a subject about this before in the other subjects. I believe it was Ru'yatul Hilal, when seeing the moon. We talked about what happens when there's two people witnesses. That's a very strong, that's a very reliable proof for us. When there's two witnesses to something, that's a very strong proof for us. It is somewhat disliked to perform the sacrifice during the night. That is the night preceding the 2nd and 3rd days of sacrifice. So not on Arafah, yeah. As for the night preceding the 1st and the 4th days, this is not valid, okay? So you can't do it after Maghrib on the 3rd day, which would be the night of the 4th day. You cannot do it after Maghrib on the 9th of the Hijjah, because that is the night of the first Eid, right? Eid day. So it has, we're talking about it's disliked to perform the sacrifice during the night, basically after Eid has started. Yeah, Eid has started, to do the sacrifice at night time is makruh. Now, this is important. Pay attention to here, because in the UK, a lot of our animals don't meet the criteria set about here. Okay. Now, specifications for the sacrificial animal. It is valid to sacrifice a jaz', which is a sheep, but not a goat or anything else. Okay, a sheep. A jaz' is a sheep that is 6 months or older. Okay. A jaz' in respect of a cow is an animal over a year old, whilst for a camel, it is an animal over 4 years old. So either you sacrifice a sheep, which is 6 months or older, or you sacrifice a cow, which is over a year old, or you sacrifice a camel, which is over 4 years old. And if mixed with a thani, it is not possible to differentiate them from a far. Okay, a thani is the older one, so they need to look like they're adults basically. If the animal has a small body, it is not permissible unless it has completed a year. So if the animal is a small animal, right, it's got a small body, then you can't sacrifice it when it's 6 months. You have to wait until it is a year old and entered into the second year. So it must have lived 366 days, right? It is valid to sacrifice a thani that is a camel, cow, buffalo, sheep, and goat. Okay, so what we're saying here up top is not that you can't sacrifice a goat. You can't sacrifice a goat which is 6 months old. You can sacrifice a goat which is what? A thani. Then we're going to explain what a thani is. A thani is a camel over 5 years old, a cow and buffalo over 2 years old, and a sheep and goat over 1 year old. Okay, so what is a jazit? It's a sheep that is 6 months. What is a thani? It's a sheep and goat over 1 year old. Okay, cow and buffaloes, we count them as the same thing, over 2 years old. And when it comes to camel, it needs to be over 5 years old. Okay. It is superior to sacrifice a sheep rather than have a 1/7 share in a cow, if the value and quantum of meat of the two is equal. If all else is equal, it's better to sacrifice a sheep. However, if the share in the cow has greater value or meat, then this share is superior. Similarly, if the value and quantum of meat is the same, a ram is superior to an ewe. The nanny goat is superior to the billy goat, and the females from camels and cows are superior to their respective males. Why? Because these are more expensive, and you should always pick what's the best when you're sacrificing, not what's the one about to die. Okay. If the sacrificial animal gives birth before slaughter, so it's been purchased with the intention of sacrificing, and before you've slaughtered it, it gives birth, the newborn is given in charity. Why? Because that animal, all of it, including the baby in its stomach, was bought for a sacrifice. Yeah. If it exits the stomach of the mother alive, so when it's being sacrificed, if it leaves the stomach of the mother alive, what is done to the mother is done to the newborn. Okay. If the newborn is not slaughtered until the days of sacrifice have passed, it is donated in charity alive. But if the newborn perishes, okay, so while slaughtering the mother, the newborn came out alive, and you didn't slaughter the newborn, but it died by itself. Obviously, it doesn't have a mother, so let's say it died by itself, or one slaughters it and eats it. So you're supposed to slaughter it and give it in charity, but if you slaughtered it and eaten it, its value is donated, okay? Because you can't give it anymore. You've eaten it. You have to give the value of it. If one keeps the newborn, all right, and slaughters it in the following year, ritual sacrifice, it is not permissible, okay? And one must offer another ritual sacrifice for this year. The slaughtered newborn is donated together with the diminution in value as a result of slaughtering. So you need to give the newborn donated. So you've slaughtered it, right? You need to give the newborn as donation. And also you need to pay whatever the difference is between a slaughtered animal and a non-slaughtered animal, because it's lost value because of you slaughtering it. If you gave it alive, it would have costed more, right? Now, the following categories of animals may be sacrificed. Okay, these are the things we are allowed to sacrifice. One that had no horn upon birth, you're allowed to sacrifice it. Or lost it due to a breakage or another cause, as long as the break did not reach the skull. So if half of the horn is broken, that's fine. If the break has reached the skull, right? If it reaches the base, sacrifice is not permissible. You're allowed to sacrifice an insane plump animal, not an insane emaciated one, yeah? An insane plump animal whose insanity does not prevent it from grazing. Basically, we're trying to say that it's able to live by itself. If it does prevent grazing, or the animal is emaciated, so it's skinny, about starving basically, then sacrifice is not permissible. Manji, which means it's ill, right? But it's plump animal, okay? If it is emaciated, then it is not permissible, right? So plump means that it's basically able to function as a proper animal. It's nice and meaty, right? An animal whose male organ is missing and is unable to breed, you may sacrifice. Remember, we're talking about things that may be sacrificed. An animal whose male organ is missing and is unable to breed, that's fine. An animal with a cough, that's fine. Unable to breed due to old age, that's fine. An animal that is branded, right? What is branding? When you get a hot metal stick and you mark the animal, whether that's jaiz or not, you're still allowed to sacrifice it. Number 8, a third of its tongue has been lost. Only a third. That's fine. Split-eared. That's fine. Cross-eyed. That's fine. Its wool has been sheared off. Again, that's fine. Okay? All of these are able to be sacrificed. So, in all the aforementioned valid cases, the sacrifice is valid, although disliked. It's makruh. Why? Since it is recommended that the animal is free from manifest defects. Okay? It is not permissible to sacrifice the following categories of animals. So these are the ones we can't sacrifice. Blind, you can't sacrifice it. One-eyed, you can't sacrifice. Emaciated and has no bone marrow, you can't sacrifice. For a lame animal means it can't walk properly. Lame animal that cannot walk with its lame leg to the place of slaughter, and it walks with 3 legs only, you can't slaughter this. If the animal places the 4th leg on the ground and draws support from it, so it doesn't just touch the ground, it draws support from it, sacrifice is permissible. Okay? Number 5, a sick animal whose sickness is evident. Number 6, a majority of the ear, tail, or the tail of a fat-tailed sheep is cut off. Okay? This happens in the UK. It's normal practice in the UK. When a sheep is born, the tail is full of fat on the sheep, yeah? When the sheep is born, what they do is they tie a rope or elastic band around the tail of the sheep, and they leave that there. What happens is blood flow stops going to the tail, and eventually the tail just drops off. So this is the same as cutting it, yeah? And because the tail of the sheep has been cut off, you cannot use the sheep for sacrifice. Number 7, lost a majority of its eyesight. So it's not completely blind, but majority of the eyesight is gone. How do you know? This is known by covering the defective eye after the animal has not fed for a day or 2, so it's hungry. Thereafter, food is brought near to the animal step by step. When it sees the food, the location is marked, okay, with its good eye. Then the sound eye is, with its bad eye. Then the sound eye is covered. With its good eye, it saw the food, so you mark the place where it saw the food. Then the sound eye is covered, so now it's looking with the defective eye. And the fodder, the food, is brought closer and closer and closer. When the animal sees the fodder, again, the place is marked. Then one looks at the difference between the 2 places. If it is a third, then a third of the eyesight has been lost. If it is a half, then the half has been lost. Okay? So if it saw the food with its good eye 10 meters away, but with its bad eye, it saw it 7 meters away, then it's only lost what? 3/10. Number 8, lost all or a majority of its teeth. Number 9, had no ear at birth. So even if it's born without an ear, you still cannot sacrifice it. Or it was cut off. If it has a small ear at birth, it's fine. Okay? Number 10, an animal who has two mammalia of the other cut off or dry. So you know how animals, they have more than one mammalia, we'll just call it nipples, yeah? If it has two which are cut off or they're dry, so milk doesn't come from them, you're not allowed to sacrifice it. For sheep or goat, even if one is dry or cut off, sacrifice is not permissible. As for one mamilla for the camel or cow, it does not prevent sacrifice. So with a camel or a cow, we look for two dry, but for a sheep or goat, even if one is dry, you're not allowed to sacrifice it. Number 11, if the nose is cut off, you can't sacrifice it. Number 12, if the milk has dried up due to illness, so not old age, but illness, then you're not allowed to sacrifice it. A fat-tailed sheep does not have a fat tail at birth. If it has a small tail at birth, sacrifice is permissible. So a fat-tailed sheep, if it's born without a tail, it's still not allowed to be sacrificed. So we're always looking for the tail. So if the animal eats feces and nothing else before its confinement, then you're not allowed to sacrifice it. If it is a camel, it is held for 40 days until its meat recovers. Okay? Cows are held for 20 and sheep and goats for 10 days. Okay, so that it gets rid of the toxins from the body. If one bought an animal free from defect, then it became defective with a preventive defect, such as those above. Okay. One must replace it with another animal if one is not a needy individual. Okay. So you bought the animal and then its nose got cut off, or it lost its teeth or something like that, right? If one is needy, the defective animal suffices. The same ruling applies if the animal was defective at the time of purchase and the defect remained. Okay? But if the defect disappears after purchase, the animal suffices the non-needy individual too. So if a needy individual, remember, they don't have to sacrifice anyways, right? But a needy individual may purchase a defective animal and sacrifice for the sake of Allah. But a non-needy person, they have to do it properly according to the rules. So they are not allowed to get a defective animal. If they get the defective animal and it's cured, then that's fine. There is no impropriety in the animal becoming defective from unrest during the slaughtering, or if it becomes defective and escapes but is then seized immediately. So during the slaughtering, if its leg breaks, or if its ear gets cut off by accident, or if its tail falls off, or something like that happens, or its teeth breaks, obviously it's not a good thing, but because it's during the slaughtering, that's fine. Okay. But if it runs away like that and then you catch it immediately, again, that's fine. But if it runs away and then it took you a while to find it, then you can't sacrifice that animal anymore. It is precautionary to gather the holes in the ears of the sacrificial animal. Okay, so if it's got a bunch of holes, gather them means measure them and see if it's more than half of an ear or not. If it's more than half of an ear, then again, you're not allowed to sacrifice the animal. So what does it say? A hole in the ear of an animal is a type of defect, and the size of multiple holes in one ear are gathered. If the sum is greater than half the size of the ear, sacrifice is impermissible. Now, the one making the sacrifice and the individual who is not needy may eat from the ritual sacrifice. That's fine. Okay. So even if you're not needy, you can still eat from your sacrifice. Some of the meat is stored away, but it is recommended that one does not give away less than a third in charity. Recommended. Okay. However, it is permissible to hold back everything for oneself. You can have all of the meat. It's fine. For the one who has a family who are not well off, as respite for them, it is recommended to not give anything away in charity. So if your family is not well off, you should keep all of the meat and you should eat it. In the following cases, the one making the sacrifice does not eat from a sacrifice. Rather, the correct way in all of these is that one gives it to the needy. Okay? An animal vowed from the outset. So we're not talking about the Eid al-Adha Qurbani. We're talking about a vowed sacrifice, right? You cannot eat from a vowed sacrifice. When it is mandatory to give the specific animal away in charity after the days of sacrifice. Remember what we said? The days of sacrifice has ended. You haven't sacrificed the animal. So now you have to give it as charity, as in you have to sacrifice it and give away all of its meat for charity. You're not allowed to eat from it anymore. Number 3, an animal once sacrificed on behalf of the deceased with the deceased instruction. Okay, you're not allowed to eat from it. A sacrifice that is mandatory upon a needy individual by purchasing the animal. Okay, so remember, a needy person doesn't have to sacrifice anything. But if they do purchase the animal, right? If they do purchase the animal, because they've started a nafila worship, what did we say? They have to end it. If they don't finish the nafila worship, as in if that animal runs away, it's a wajib upon them now to sacrifice. So even though they didn't have to sacrifice in the beginning, they've made it wajib upon themselves by purchasing the animal and starting a nafila sacrifice. So if that animal runs away, that person has to now do what? Purchase another animal or somehow find another animal to sacrifice. And that animal, they're not allowed to eat from. Number 5, newborn that the sacrificial animal gave birth to. Remember what we said? The newborn, as in you slaughtered the mother and the baby popped out, and the baby, you have to sacrifice it and give it away. Animal being shared by 7 individuals, and some intended with their share a makeup of something from the past. So if they're intending qada, right, then nobody's allowed to eat from the animal. Okay, but if everybody is intending a normal Eid al-Adha sacrifice, then they can eat from the animal. It is recommended to slaughter the animal oneself, if one knows how to do so. Obviously, if you're not going to cause undue pain to the animal, then you should sacrifice it yourself. If you've never done it before, you should first watch and learn. It's not that hard. You just have to be brave, a little bit brave, and because being brave stops you from hurting the animal more, because you have to get the knife and you have to push it and be brave about it, so it's quick and painless. If you hesitate, and then you're going to have to start going back and forth, which is a lot more painful for the animal. So just be brave, watch how it's done by the professionals. It's not that hard. You basically do it every day, just not on a live animal. One witnesses it and instructs. So otherwise, if you don't know how to do it, you should at least witness it and instruct another to slaughter. The slaughtering by a Jew or Christian at the behest of the owner is makruh, disliked. That is, if they do it properly, right, with the name of Allah. However, if he does so, it is permissible. As for the slaughtering by a Magian, or a non-Jew, non-Christian, like an atheist or a Magian, it is unlawful. Okay. One should give the animal's hide away in charity. So you should, the skin of the animal, you should give it away in charity, or you should manufacture something from it, such as a sieve, a sack, water skin, tablecloth, or a leather bucket. Or one may exchange the hide for a non-consumable item, including money, that may be benefited from. It is not exchanged for consumable items such as vinegar, meat, and the like, such as dirhams. Okay, so you're not allowed to exchange the hide for money. You either, so what are we talking about, right? Why are we talking about this? So the sacrificed animal, we know what to do with the meat. You either give it away or you eat it. But the hide, what do you do with the hide? Because you can't eat the hide, right? So either you give it away in charity, just like the meat. If you're not going to give it away in charity, you're not going to eat it. So what are you going to do with it? You should make something out of it. All right, don't let it go to waste. Make something out of it. Or you can give it away, but not for money. You can exchange it for something, but not for money. If you give it for money, your sacrifice is wasted. The whole point of sacrificing the animal is to not receive any money from it, right? So if you give away the hide, so if you sell the hide, you're selling your sacrifice, right? So that's why it says you shouldn't get things like vinegar, meat, and money from it. It is makruh to sell the meat or hide for consumable goods or dirhams, and one gives the price of the goods or dirhams in charity. Okay, so if you sell your sacrifice and then give that money for charity, it's makruh. So tahrim and makruh, it's allowed. The transaction is valid, but it's tahrim and makruh to do so. Yeah. To sell the meat or hide for consumable goods and give that in charity. If one hires out the sieve, sack, water skin, tablecloth, or leather. So if you turned it into, if you turned the hide into a sieve, a sack, a water skin, a tablecloth, or something else, and then you hired it out, right? So you didn't sell it, but you hired it out. It is not permissible, and one must give away the rental money in charity. You're not allowed to make money from the sacrifice. The payment of the butcher is not given from part of the sacrificial animal. This is important. A lot of butchers, what they'll say is, we're going to cut up the meat for you, but we're going to keep the scraps. You have to say, no, you can't keep the scraps being the meat. You have to include whatever it is in the, if he does it without you knowing, then that's him doing thievery, right? That's got nothing to do with you. But if he says, you know, I'll do it for free, but I'll keep the scraps, or I'll keep the bones, or I'll keep this or that, no. Okay. It is disliked to cut the wool of the sacrificial animal before slaughtering in order to benefit from it. However, it is not disliked after slaughtering. Okay. If two people mistakenly slaughter each other's sheep on their own behalf, okay, so they did it in their own names, but it was the other person's sheep, it is valid, and each sacrifice occurs on behalf of the animal's owner. Okay, and each person takes his now skinned animal, so we exchange the animals. If they have both consumed the other's animal and then they become aware of the mistake, they absolve each other of any liability, they forgive each other. Okay, however, if they withhold from exonerating one another, so if they decide that they're not going to forgive each other, each one is liable to the other for the value of his animal's meat, and the payment is given away in charity. So they have to pay each other money, and once they receive that money, they have to give it away in charity. So they're being petty. Similarly, if someone deliberately slaughters another's animal and does so on his own behalf, okay, the owner has a choice. If he makes the slayer liable, the sacrifice occurs on behalf of the slayer. Why? Because once you make somebody liable, that means you've basically sold it to them, because they have to pay you money now. So you've basically sold the animal to them. So the sacrifice is valid for the slayer because he slayed his own animal now. Otherwise, it is on behalf of the owner. If, however, the slayer slaughters the animal on behalf of the owner, it occurs on behalf of the owner. Okay? All these rulings are in respect of a sheep that has been prepared for slaughter. Otherwise, as in the case of a usurped sheep, if the sheep has been stolen, okay, that is slaughtered, it is valid for the owner. It is valid if the owner makes the slayer responsible for the value of the sheep when it was alive. However, the usurper has sinned. Obviously, you've stolen a sheep. If the owner takes the slaughtered sheep and makes the slayer liable for the loss in value, the sacrifice is not permissible on behalf of either of them. Okay? Now, this is the last bit. The sacrifice is not valid by slaughtering a sheep placed with one as a deposit, loaned or hired, placed with one as a pawn, that a managing agent trades for its owner, for which one is an agent to buy it. So you've been instructed by somebody else to buy it, for which one is an agent to protect the owner's assets and slaughters his sheep. So you were supposed to be protecting it, but you slaughtered it. Owned and slaughtered by the husband or wife without the spouse's permission. Okay. none of these are acceptable. The sacrifice is not valid. Okay? And we have finished Kitab al-Zakat. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. الفاتحة مع الصلوات.